Yes, sir. What's your name?
My name's Javier.
Javier, how are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
All right, great.
My beautiful wife, Rachel, over there.
Hey, Rachel. How are you?
I got a question for you on the...
Coming a little closer to the mic, if
I
you
got a
will.
question for you on the analogy that you gave on, like, your wife or girlfriend.
Uh-huh. It was my wife.
Right.
Okay.
So, can you repeat that so they could hear the question again, or the...
You're talking about
analogy?
belief that, belief in?
I want to look at this video really quick between Frank Turek and a skeptic who comes up to question him at Ohio State. Let's dive in.
That analogy where I said that I got evidence that my wife would be a good wife.
Yes.
I got evidence that she'd be a good wife. That was intellectual. But all the evidence in the world didn't make her my wife. I had to take a step of trust in her to ask her to be my wife.
Right. Well, my question is, like, have you ever seen the show Catfish?
No.
Do you know what? I'm sure everybody...
When is that show on?
You know what? I've watched it a couple times. It's on MTV. It's basically... Catfish is a show basically where someone pretends to be someone else on the internet.
Uh-huh.
So, see, my thing is with God, okay? If God exists, because you keep saying he's outside of time.
Right.
I don't know what that means when you say God exists outside of time.
Well, let me ask you this question. The laws of logic, are they inside of time or are they transcendent?
Well, your video said that... What did your video say? That God cannot, what, break the laws of logic?
God's nature establishes the laws of logic. So, yes.
How do you know that?
Well, because he is the ground of everything that exists.
But how do you know that?
Well, now you're asking an epistemological question.
It's fine.
Epistemology, as you know, has to deal with how you know. Ontology has to deal with that something exists.
Yeah.
So if these laws exist, they must come from a lawgiver.
Okay. If God is, if I gave you $1 million, okay, you have 3 kids. I give you $1 million, right? I'm going to give you this $1 million for 0 seconds. Does that mean that you have it?
Well, no, because that's a contradiction. You haven't given it to me if it's for 0
Right.
seconds.
So if God is outside of space and time, what is that? What
Oh,
does
well,
that
he can, his acts can intervene into space-time, but he personally is not in space-time because he's not a spatial being.
How do you know that? How can you prove that to us that this God is outside
Well,
of
okay,
space and time?
let me give you one argument. The evidence shows that space, matter, and time had a beginning. Even atheists admit this. Stephen Hawking, space, matter, and time had a beginning. In other words, the universe had a beginning.
Okay.
Atheists aren't even arguing over that now. They're trying to come up with another explanation other than God. But if space, matter, and time had a beginning, whatever created space, matter, and time can't be in space, matter, and time.
So what created God?
Well, that's a good question, but let me get there.
And who created God?
Let me get there. Let me finish this, okay? Because I don't have time. No. If space, matter, and time had a beginning, whatever created space, matter, and time can't be made of space, matter, and time. In other words, the being must transcend space, matter, and time.
But,
and if let me finish.
Yeah, but this is something that this is a claim.
This is a deduction from the evidence. If space, matter, and time had a beginning, the cause must be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. Now, if you're timeless...
How can you prove that claim?
It's a deduction from the evidence.
Were you there?
Well, no, but nobody was there at the creation of the universe, but that doesn't mean we don't have theories about how it happened.
Right.
Right.
But then
you weren't there when George Washington was on the earth either, but you believe in George Washington.
But George Washington, it doesn't matter if I believe in George Washington.
You're absolutely right.
Because George Washington doesn't say to me that if you don't believe in me, you go to hell.
That's exactly right.
That's a big difference.
Well, no, there's a big implication here. I agree with you, Javier. There's a big implication. However, regardless of the implications, how you know something is irrelevant of the implications. Right? If space, matter, and time had a beginning, the logical implication of that is whatever created the universe is timeless. Now, if you're timeless, do you have a beginning?
Well, you would have to, that's a claim that you would have to prove.
But it's a deduction from the evidence, okay? Whatever created time, can the being that created time be made of time?
Well, we don't know that. We weren't there, right?
If wood didn't exist and wood was created, could the being that created wood be made of wood?
If wood, say that again?
If wood did not exist and suddenly it did exist, could the being that made wood be made of wood? No.
I thought that was a really great point. There were more video to come, so stay with us. But just real quick, clearly Javier is struggling with some of these concepts, and we're going to get to kind of why I feel like he's struggling towards the end of the video. So stay tuned for that. But that's a great point that Dr. Turek makes, and he brings it to something that's natural, to really ground some of these ethereal thoughts for Javier into reality. So he says, if wood doesn't exist and wood was created, could the being that created wood be made of wood? Wild little woodchuck thing there. So if time and space come into existence, the being who creates time and space has to not be made of time and space. If there was a time where space and time wasn't, you get what I mean. He can't be made of space and time. Confusing, but important. Let's keep going.
That's what we're saying here. If time had a beginning, if time didn't exist and then suddenly did exist, whatever created time can't be in time, must transcend time.
Well, going back to this, the catfish analogy. Where is this guy? Like, for me to meet my wife or anybody, I mean, we have models of human beings. Where is this model of God?
Okay, you're asking a where question about a being that's not a where being.
Yeah, but he interacts, right? He dips his hand, he answers prayer, he heals people, right? So he should, this being should leave remnants of themselves.
You're absolutely right. That's how we know God exists. We know God by his effects. We don't see God directly.
That's if it's true.
Yes.
Because people can be mistaken, right?
Sure, people can be mistaken. Right. But we know there's a creator when we reason from the effect of creation back to a creator. We know there's a moral lawgiver when we reason from the moral law back to a moral lawgiver. Okay? We're reasoning from effect to cause. If you were to go up on Mars right now and find a computer, you wouldn't know who put it there, right? But you would know there had to be an intelligent being that put it there, even if you never saw him.
That's because we have models of people making computers. We have human beings that build computers, and we have that as a model. And what I'm saying is, where is this God, this model? Where is he?
Okay.
Where is he?
At the end of the day, you're asking a where question about a non-where being. Where are the laws of logic?
Well,
where is the justice molecule?
Well, the laws of logic are something that we as human beings, it's a concept that it's a label that we give it, a concept that we build to help ourselves through society, through life.
All right, let me ask you a question about that. So you're saying that human minds create the laws of logic?
Not that we create them. It's a concept that we have.
It is a concept, but do they exist independent of our minds?
Well, a rock is still a rock if there's no human beings to say that it's a rock or to think it.
That's true.
Right?
Yes. So these laws exist, even if there were no human beings, these laws of logic would exist.
Yes.
I agree with you. Now the question is, where do those laws come from? They come from lawgivers. They come from a reason, logos, logic.
But you're using the word laws. It's so that the word law is a word a label that we give it.
But what if this label actually communicates the truth? It's not just a label. What if it's the truth to say that all laws come from lawgivers?
That all laws come from lawgivers?
Lawgivers.
Well, I think it's we as human beings get together and we label these things.
We do label them, but we could have called it something else. Right. But does it correspond to reality to say that if there's a law, there must be a lawgiver?
If there was a law, well,
do you know any law that exists that doesn't come from a lawgiver?
The laws of logic.
That's what I'm saying. They must come from a lawgiver then, because every other law we know about comes from a lawgiver.
Well, we don't know that.
Well,
this is just something that we as human beings...
But Javier, you're making a claim, and you need evidence for your claim as much as I need evidence for my claim, right? So the question is, what evidence do you have that the laws of logic have no grounding? Where do they come from?
Well, we could just say we don't know.
Well, you could say that, or you could take an inference to the best explanation to say that if every law has a lawgiver, then the laws of logic must have a lawgiver.
You say it's the best explanation.
Well, you don't have to accept it. You're right.
Yeah, you say.
But let me ask you a question. If Christianity were true, would you become a Christian?
Well, it depends on what your definition of Christianity is, because there's different.
All right, let me put it this way.
It all depends, because Mormons call themselves Christians.
Yeah, I understand.
Jehovah's Witnesses
Yeah,
call
you're right.
themselves
You're
Christians.
right.
So it all depends on.
Let me
what
put
you
it
mean.
another way. If Jesus rose from the dead to show and prove that he was God, would you follow his teachings?
Well, we don't have any models.
If.
We don't have any models of anybody rising from the dead.
Of course not, because if a lot of people were rising from the dead, the resurrection of Christ would mean nothing to us.
No,
The very fact that it is a rare event shows how special it is.
No, I mean, babies are born every day. That's a, you know, I mean, does that mean that every time a baby's born, we're just like, oh, hey, we don't rejoice with people? Yes, we do. I mean, that would be great if we saw
Right, but you seem to be
examples
saying,
of that.
Javier, that you'd have to see a lot of resurrections to believe the resurrection of Christ.
But, you know, it's silly because we don't see any resurrection.
That's
Any
right.
resurrections. We don't see anybody rising from the dead.
That's
We
right.
don't see anybody walking on water.
If you did see that all the time, we would consider them some sort of natural event or natural phenomenon. The only reason miracles get our attention is because, against the backdrop of regular events, they're extremely rare. I mean, if people were popping up from the dead all the time, the resurrection of Christ would mean nothing.
Not all the time. It would be nice to just see one.
There is one.
How do you know that he rose from the dead?
There is eyewitness testimony.
Were you there? Were you there? Has anybody in here ever seen anybody rise from the dead after 3 days? Anybody? Can you raise your hand?
Javier, has anyone seen George Washington?
But George Washington doesn't tell us that if we don't believe in him, we go to hell.
Again, the implications of George Washington.
But it's a good point, though, right? It doesn't matter to me if George Washington was alive or not.
I know it doesn't
He
matter.
to most of us. I mean, great. You know? So,
Again, let me go back to my question.
go ahead.
If it were true, would you follow the teachings of Jesus?
Well, it all depends on your definition of truth.
If I gave you a...
Truth is that which corresponds to reality.
Yes, you are correct.
And people rising from the dead, I don't have any examples of that. I don't.
You do.
No, I don't.
I'm saying if, but we do. That's Jesus.
Well,
okay?
you don't. I mean, a book says that it did, but we don't. We don't.
What
know.
evidence would you need to see to say that it happened?
That'd be pretty presumptuous of me to say that. If God was real, He would know what it would take to convince me, right?
Unless you don't want to be convinced.
Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't?
Well, that's why I keep asking you the question, and you keep saying
No,
you
guys
keep
say,
dodging it.
You say that this place is awesome and it's great, and you know it'll be like this. The Bible says all these things. Why would I not want to go there?
Good question. Why would you?
If God would know what it would take to convince me.
No, there's a difference between belief that and belief in.
Right.
He can convince you belief that, but if you want to go to belief in, that's your choice.
Would God know what it would take to convince me that He was real?
Oh, of course.
Right. So why doesn't He do that?
How do you know that you are being completely honest with yourself?
I know I'm completely honest. I'm being completely honest.
I'm not completely honest. Nobody in here is completely honest.
Just because you're not doesn't mean that I.
Okay.
Just because you're not doesn't mean that I am.
I love this video because I think it really gets to the heart of many, many, many skeptics. Most people think that skeptics or atheists, or even if you're watching this right now and you are a skeptic or atheist, a lot of Christians tend to think these are just evil people who hate God, who, whatever, I don't know, they're just evil. And obviously, a Christian belief, evil is in every person's heart, so on a level that is kind of true, but evil's in my heart. Thank you for Jesus for saving me from that evil. But I really feel like most people truly desire Christ. The scripture says He is the desire of the nations. Every single person has a God-shaped hole in their heart, and they want it to be true. I see Javier desiring this to be true. He wants it to be true. The interesting thing is I think Javier is approaching this a little different than what Frank usually approaches the subject, and it's really kind of what we've been talking about a lot on this channel, is the need for the reality of God to hit in the physical universe, to hit in people's lives, namely signs, wonders, and miracles. I mean, he kind of shows his cards where he's like, we don't see any dead raised. And as I'm watching that video, I'm like, excuse me, I know of people who have prayed for people who have been dead, and they have been raised after 1, 2, 3, 4 days being dead, medically verified, documented in this country and other countries across the world. And so I'm like, excuse me, actually it is happening. People like Javier, I see, are desirous for an encounter with the real God. Even in the beginning of the video, when he's like, where is he? Where is this God? I know he's asking a where question of like, where is God in the universe? And Frank kind of got tripped up. But I actually think the root of that question in his heart is actually like, where is he? I long to see him. He said, if heaven is real, if all this stuff is real, why would I not want? And so like Christians, you need to understand, atheists and skeptics, whatever, I believe in their heart of hearts, if they're like, if heaven's real, I want to go there. Why would I not want to go to heaven? Javier is really searching. Javier is really desperate. And I think he is one of those people who could really benefit from a move of the Spirit, from seeing a sign and a wonder. He's wanting the immaterial to break into the material. And I think it's really important. This is why we need to be using signs, wonders, and miracles in addition to philosophy like this on the front lines of evangelism. Now, other thing I'll say is when Frank asked him, if it were real, would you become a Christian? You can kind of see Javier kind of squirming, not physically, but he's trying to get out of the question. He knows what's happening. And in a couple other points in the video, it really seems like Javier, more than likely, if I could put money on it, Javier grew up in the church. Javier probably was serving in a church or grew up Christian, whatever, and he probably has some real church wounds, some hurt there. Seems like he even knows some basis of Christianity. And there is an emotional side. So also to the Christian out there who's like frustrated with all the atheists, listen, I know it can be frustrating, but some people who are struggling with their faith, like I was when I was a skeptic, they're wrestling with intellectual questions, but many of them are also wrestling with emotional questions, emotional wounds, baggage, things that they're carrying. And it's hard to reconcile that things, and it's hard even our own hearts to navigate. Jordan Peterson says we're not the master of our own hearts, that we don't even have the ability to really know what's really going on. And I could sense that Javier is probably struggling with some of this stuff. So he's trying to reconcile. But man, I was really encouraged after this video, to be honest with you. I know some people might watch this and be like, man, he's dodging his questions. Like, no, I see Javier is hungry. He's desiring something real. And we need to be presenting the gospel in its fullness with signs, wonders, and miracles to attest. It's not going to make everybody believe, but I believe Javier is a great example of someone who could really benefit from seeing an empty wheelchair. Thank you guys for watching. Hey, if you want to watch some more videos, here they are right here. Thank you guys so much for the support. I'll catch you guys later. Bye.